images of the Buddha are actually going to begin like images of Jesus. By that I mean that the creators were a little bit hesitant to actually depict the Buddha. They didn't think it was appropriate. They treated him with so much awe and respect that they used symbols to suggest the presence of the Buddha. And I've got two examples of that. One would be the footprints of the Buddha, located in the top center, and then this one. This is the throne of Buddha, or it perhaps would be best to think about it as a symbolic representation of when Buddha went to meditate, hoping to attain enlightenment, because the tree's behind him. So that's the Bodhi tree, the tree essentially of Buddha, where he attained enlightenment with all of the evil spirits around the chair and the tree trying to distract the Buddha. This beginning with early symbols is going to change when Alexander the Great conquers a portion of present-day India, taking Greek culture into the East. That is going to influence images, and I'd like you to see this one over here on our right. The name of that style is Gandharan, but it's Greek-inspired, and it's an early depiction of the Buddha. It's an early depiction of the Buddha that almost looks like it was created by a Roman. It has a great sense of physical presence. It has clear linear form that suggests maybe even a Roman toga. These influences are, however, going to free up Buddhist carvers, and eventually we're going to get, I'm going to say, relatively standardized depictions of Buddha, so that today, if you go to a museum or even if you go to a Buddhist temple, you're going to see an image of the Buddha and you're probably going to understand it. So let's take a look at one of these. This is the one I would particularly like you to know. It's figure 1515 in our textbook, and it is a classic depiction of Buddha. None of these portrayals of Buddha qualify as portraits. The artist is not intending to show us what the Buddha looked like, but rather to sum up the essence of the teachings of Buddha. It is likely, in fact, that the artist would actually meditate before beginning to carve the statue of Buddha, so that the artist would have a feeling, a sense of the Buddha that he could bring to his piece of sculpture. This is clearly very formal, very frontal, and very symmetrical. It is also very spiritual. The Buddha has semi-closed eyes and a very, very calm face. We maintain the rounded, swelling forms of Hindu art, but the overall feeling is vastly different because the Buddha is in meditation. He brings with him the calmness of meditation. And I'd also like to suggest perhaps the calmness of moderation, of being on the middle path, which is associated with meditation. The image of Buddha is standardized, so it becomes very easy to appreciate when we look at one image or another image that we're looking at an image that depicts the Buddha and his fundamental characteristics. One of the things that we know about the Buddha was that he was a very smart guy. Consequently, in depictions of the Buddha, we often find that his head is quite large. It's intended to be a little bit bigger in terms of proportions than we might find other human heads to be. But the Buddha is so smart, he actually has a protuberance of wisdom that seems to come out of his head on top of it. You can think of it as a top knot, but it's meant to reflect on the wisdom of the Buddha himself. We also find, in addition to smoothly carved surfaces, that the Buddha is usually shown with semi-closed or closed eyes, and that does reference meditation, but it also references shutting out the concerns of the world. The same quality is going to apply to his body. The roundness, the gentleness of the curves are going to be soothing and calming. This, in fact, is an image that you would look at if you went into a Buddhist temple that would help you to meditate on the Buddha and his teachings. We also have to remember that the Buddha had princely origins, and that consistently is depicted in images of Buddha because we have very, very long earlobes. Those earlobes refer to the earlier life of the Buddha, when as a prince, when as a wealthy man, he would have spent his time in the palace wearing elaborate earrings, jeweled earrings, which would have had great weight and would have extended the length of his ears. So we're reminded that the Buddha does come from Kshatriya caste, that he was a prince, and that he gave that all up in order to seek enlightenment for himself and then ultimately to share it with others. This image of Buddha is also shown in hierarchic scale. The Buddha himself in the shape of a triangle, and we learned back with ancient Egypt the triangular forms are bottom heavy and stable and calming, and that's being used here with the meditative posture that the Buddha is in. This figure is facing us formally and frontally. He is also much larger than his followers below, and we get a group of 3 on one side and a group of 3 on the other side, and in the middle, directly on axis running through the Buddha, is the wheel of Dharma, the wheel of enlightenment, the wheel that represents the teachings of the Buddha. There are a couple flying figures, one over here, and I know they're damaged, so they're a little bit hard to see, so that they are, I'm going to say, coming out of the tradition of guardian figures to protect the Buddha and also to honor the Buddha. In this particular instance, we also have a mudra, M-U-D-R-A, a hand gesture, which is symbolic, and again, it's a little bit damaged, but this particular mudra is referencing the start of, he's giving basically the command to begin turning the wheel of enlightenment and sharing his teachings with others. The Buddha presented himself only as a teacher. After his death, however, it became necessary for some of his followers to elevate the Buddha to a position of being divine. Consequently, Buddhism will split into 2 divisions. Let me just show us a picture here. There we go. 2 major branches of Buddhism. The lesser vehicle, known as Hinayana, and the Mahayana, the greater vehicle. In the lesser vehicle, which is close to what I think the teaching of the Buddha really reflected, the Buddha was not a divine being. He was only a teacher, a guide, someone who would give us the 3 M's and tell us to go out and work hard and do it ourselves. That was sometimes for people too difficult. So the greater vehicle treats Buddha as a divine being, as someone who could intercede and help them in a loving way. How do we recognize the difference between these? Well, in lesser vehicle images, the Buddha is usually shown as a very plainly carved figure. This image that we're looking at right here is greater vehicle. Buddha is seated on a throne. He has attendants, he has courtly figures, essentially guardian figures surrounding him. And I'd like you to see this, which is an elaborately carved halo form emanating from behind the Buddha. It can be traced back to sun symbolism used by Hindus and also used in the Indus Valley. Again, linking these great cultural traditions together, but also reminding us that Buddhism morphed. It morphed from the simple teachings of a messenger into the teachings of a divine being.